Danse, Oki, Danit Ada, Ambawa Stitch, and howdy. Welcome to Istotsi. Tonight we are so excited to be having our last episode, and it's here at the Grand in the home theater of where we do Making Treaty 7. And we've also got a really incredible guest with us tonight. It's someone that I've known for a very long time, and someone I have loved watching on stage so many times. So please welcome to Istotsi, Denise Clarke.
Thank you, Michelle. What a pleasure it is. I'm really thrilled we could do this, and especially that we could do it live.
Right.
This is exciting.
It's exciting because it's been, all the isolation has been really difficult, so just to be across from a human in a safe way, though, is good.
Yeah, after a while you start to tire of the Zoom experience when you're trying to have a real comunicado moment with someone that you love.
Yeah,
so
are you feeling safe right now?
I feel really safe.
Good.
I love this place so much, and I feel like we've got we're blessed with our elk horns here, and yeah, I feel really good.
Good.
I've been feeling the spring coming up in me. I don't know if you have, but even though we got snow yesterday, I feel a lightness.
Right?
Yeah, I'm quite happy about it.
Yeah, I feel like things are shifting. So I'm assuming that only good things are gonna start happening because we've been through so much in the last year.
Yeah, and you see it reverberating out into the community, and you know how it's shutting down the children, especially. I hate to see them not able to just go over to their pal's house and play on their own. But at least when you go to those playgrounds, oh my God, they are giving her.
Yeah. They are giving her.
Oh, it's so cute.
Man. Yeah, no. So just to reiterate, we've done 10 episodes now of Istotsi.
Congrats.
Thank you. It started off as just this vision that we wanted to create something, and it was supposed to be alive in the theater with audience members watching, with young viewers watching. And this is what we came up with to put up with COVID and to be able to deliver these workshops weekly.
Yeah.
And I'm super glad that, Denise, you could come on board as part of the MT7 family.
Well, I'm honored to, and it's a real opportunity to relive some of the experiences because it's been a while.
It has been a while.
And sometimes I'm finding that the pandemic has made me so forgetful.
Wow, let's start remembering.
Let's do it.
Tell me about how you first heard about Making Treaty 7.
Oh, I remember it quite vividly. It was in rehearsal, and Michael Green was finishing up his year of 2012 as the artistic director of that particular year of cultural celebration in Calgary. And he came in and he told us all about it, and it was all just kind of an amazing listening experience. It was really epic, his vision.
Yeah.
And he was putting together this huge, the first stage, which were you on board right from the very get-go? So this was when all the elders were going to be getting together. And he was telling us, the scale of that gathering and the coming together of all the different Treaty 7 nations. And we were, agog. It was like, wow, Michael, this is amazing. And it was kind of exciting to know, that he had this person in Narcissus that was his new favorite person in the world.
Yeah.
And his brother and his teacher and his kind of soul connection. And it was just kind of extraordinary to see Michael in that light, because I could see his really genuine passion. And I've worked with the guy for a long time, and so I did really recognize that this was something different. And then the next stage, so I was kept in touch with all of what was going on, but I wasn't on board yet as one of the members of the Making Treaty 7 family because I wasn't invited yet. And then what happened was he came in and he gave us a presentation. Blake asked him to give a kind of more formal presentation about what happened at Fort Calgary. And with Blake sort of augmenting the story, he told us about the experience. And it was very powerful, to say the very least. And we were pretty moved, Andy and I, and just said, look, we're ready. Let us join in whatever you need us to do, however I can serve, let me know. This is genuinely really exciting stuff. And then I got to come on stage with you all, and when was that?
It was the second iteration when we were at the Bella.
The Bella.
Yeah, I remember. And for those of you who aren't sure, Denise is part of One Yellow Rabbit, which is an amazing theater company here in Calgary. And Michael was part of One Yellow Rabbit, and Blake is part of One Yellow Rabbit, and then Andy Curtis. And that makes up One Yellow Rabbit, the four of you, right, or the ensemble?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so Michael Green, who headed up the vision of Making Treaty 7, he had a whole life of theater before that. You guys were traveling the world. Everyone around the world knew who One Yellow Rabbit was, and then you watched him go from this theater huge persona, and then he entered into this other world of ceremonying and going to Sundance and learning about the way of the Niitsitapi people, and it shifted his whole life.
Oh, it totally did. I think he had been seeking, I don't think I speak out of turn here, I know him so well, or I knew him so well, but I think he had been seeking, who hasn't been seeking? We all have, for all of the spirituality that will speak to us most truly and most authentically. And there was no doubt about it. Going into the Kainai place of spirit and worship and ceremony was the place for him. He responded with such truth and love, and I think it was really, really good for him, and certainly for Maya, his daughter, his beautiful daughter, and I think that resonance really affected me to see him in that light, and to believe what I was seeing.
Yeah, it was truly beautiful, because I've spoken about this before, is that Michael came from this world of theater and bright lights and opening nights and traveling the world, and then he met up with this man named Narcissus Blood, who came from the reserve, had an incredible life. There was a lot of life lived there, but a lot of pain, a lot of trauma, but still became an icon for the Blackfoot people with his language reclamation and with traveling the world and bringing back sacred items to the Niitsitapi people. Narcissus was such a kind human being and just so full of love and non-judgment, and it was beautiful. And so these two human beings came together, and it was like they kind of exchanged I don't know what, like
vows.
Yeah.
It's like they exchanged vows or something, like the old ceremony where blood brothers.
Yeah, exactly, right? And then all of a sudden Narcissus is on stage, as an actor, sharing his experience of residential schools, and
so charming and so moving.
Oh, right. I know. I was just
him.
Actually talking about that the other day, about Narcissus. When he shared with us as a group about his grade 2 or 3 teacher making all of them in residential school sing, "What do we do with a drunken Indian?" and how that hurt him so much. And he spoke about that on stage, and then all the actors came out and we surrounded him in that world premiere while he sang that. It was just such a beautiful, cathartic experience for Narcissus and for so many people.
Oh yeah,
but yeah,
to this day it's moving to even remember and think about. Yeah, and we were lucky enough too in him trying to share some of the Blackfoot knowledge and the paradigm, and inviting us to Red Crow College, and you know, going there as a settler who had really just, you know, maybe I'd been on reserves, I don't know, 4 or 5 times in my life. But this was we were so welcomed, and we were brought into the college, and I found that particularly powerful too, the reclaiming. It's obviously now gone with the fire, but reclaiming that residential school and making it the place of learning and renaming it Red Crow College was so cool and powerful. And then, you know, so he was giving us a class on, you know, the colonization process, and, you know, but friendly and funny, and, you know, I was so at ease. It was such an extraordinary exchange, because I was slowly recognizing that he was helping me really understand my own privilege and my own place in the world, at the same time that he just wanted to share this information and bring me into the fold, bring us into the fold with generosity and humor, that teasing of his. Oh my God, such a funny guy. And then he took us on a tour through the center, and he took us up to where he slept. And he showed us out the window.
When it was a residential school?
When it was a school.
Yeah. Okay.
Where he was brought. And he showed us out the window where his parents lived. And he told us what it was like for him as a little boy, having to look through that window. It's so, I still get really choked up by that.
For me, I just think about how you and Andy and Blake and Michael, who were, you know, had, like I said, traveled the world, going to theater festivals, and then you find yourselves down in southern Alberta on the Blood Reserve as a company. Yeah. The largest reserve in Canada. Yeah. And there you guys were, you know, just being taught different ways of,
wow, it was amazing.
Of being. Yeah, I love that.
Oh, it was such a special opportunity, and it cranked open our minds and filled them with the desire and I think more than even just the desire, the commitment to make the change however we could, to be part of, you know, supporting, you know, to be some of these settlers who can support Indigenous-led projects, which now here we are, and it's just so exciting with you at the helm. How are you feeling about that? Are you pleased?
Yeah, being the AD of Making Treaty 7 has been very interesting so far, because we haven't been able to do a lot, and I have so many ideas, and I just want to go, and it's like I can't until we get through this pandemic. So I haven't been able to do too much yet, but I love this. I love.
Yeah. Well, this has been a really cool initiative. I applaud you, because it would have been really easy to just go, well, we can't do anything, we just have to wait. But you didn't. Yeah. And it's been, I understand, pretty successful. You've had lots of people tuning in. And
yeah, it's been really good. We're really fortunate to be able to do this series. And we do Istotsi because we want to inspire young people out there to get into the arts. Yeah. And so every week we've been bringing on different artists and who talk about their careers, talk about their connections to Making Treaty 7, how that changed their lives. And hopefully if we can inspire even just 2-3 artists out there to come audition for us, we have won. Yeah, so we're trying to do that right now, and we're going to be holding auditions in June, so stay tuned to our website and our Facebook page, and we will release the dates. And in the meantime, we want all of you to continue watching, to go back and review the episodes to gain that knowledge, because that's what Istotsi is about. It's about immersing yourself into something so deeply that it affects your whole life and it changes who you are. So that's what Istotsi means in the Blackfoot language. And that's what these workshops are all about, is about affecting people. As an actor, that's sort of why I got into this business, was because I wanted to create change and affect people. Why did you want to become an actor, Denise?
Well, I started in dance. You know, I was classically trained, and then I kept growing and being taller and taller and taller, and it was like getting problematic to wear point shoes. And so then I sort of branched out from the classical dance world and started training in other systems, and then moving around the country working as an independent dance artist, choreographer and performer. And then when I came back and settled into Calgary, I met all the One Yellow Rabbit posse and kind of just fell in love with the whole spirit of the thing and joined the company. And I didn't really set out to become an actor as much as I just was suddenly an actor.
Wow.
I mean, I had no theater school training. I had no, there was nothing that set me up for it. So in order to, and that maybe is I hope that's maybe helpful to some of the listeners and, some of you young'uns out there to know that it's not necessary to have a theater school background to do really important and beautiful work. For me, the most important thing was I felt safe and free and comfortable and happy with the people I found to work with. And that's maybe just a great stroke of luck. And maybe sometimes we have to hunt a little longer, but also there was a commitment between all of us way back in the 80s to, maybe aim ourselves at making a body of work. So as it just kept emerging, I became more and more fascinated by speaking text and writing text and directing, and all the different hats in the theater world were coming to me to try on, and I decided to go ahead and take that. And I think that's nowadays a really extra bit of luck that I had the good fortune to know as a young woman. It wasn't enough for me just to dance or just to be a performer and actor. I really did wear a lot of hats as a teacher and educator. I began teaching at the U of C when I was in my early 20s, 21 years old. And that just happened too. I mean, I didn't finish high school, but there I was at the University of Calgary teaching dance classes to all kinds of people. And from jocks in the now then it was called the phys ed department, now it's the kinesiology department, but teaching beginning jazz dance to them and teaching advanced practice to the, emerging professionals. So it was a really great cross-section of people that I was training. And at the same time, I was developing myself as an actor. And then I was teaching classes in the community to just like little kids and friends and everybody. And it all seemed to come together to keep leaning me towards what we called in the 80s dance drama.
Oh, wow.
Or dance theater,
Okay.
which was bringing the two together. And I just leaned more and more and more into text. I suppose because I am a writer as well.
Yeah.
And so, wanting to write the text, speak the text.
Who in your career is someone that inspired you to want to be an actor? Like, is there any actors out there that you worked with that made you go, this is why I do this?
I've been asked this before, and I'm always a little bit embarrassed, or I ask myself, why wasn't, it didn't occur to me until I was working with the Rabbits. And all of a sudden I thought, I loved Michael on stage. I was like, this guy is amazing. And I liked the way he moved. And he had that, remember, his very physical sense of himself. And I'd seen him doing these really freaky little small performances in houses, and I was blown away. And then Blake was like, yeah, that's the guy I'm sort of working with in Icarus Theater. And so I would say Michael had a lot to do with it, but I watched, classic cinema from Hollywood. That's the kind of, I hadn't really spent much time in theaters. I wasn't a kid who was taken to the theater. I was too busy dancing. Did you go to the theater?
Oh gosh, no.
Right? I mean,
Like I don't remember as a kid ever seeing a play, but I also didn't go to school for, like, the same as you. I didn't go to theater school. I didn't take an ounce of training. I went to all-native school here in Calgary called the Plains Indian Cultural Survival School, and I luckily got my grade 12 by the skin of my teeth. Like, I don't know how that happened, but I never went to university. I never went to theater school. And I just met people along the way who inspired me to do what I do. And one of those people, thank goodness, was the late Gordon Tatusis.
right.
I met him when I was 17 years old, and he was already an actor. And I said to him, you know, I love acting. I love being able to tell our stories from this place of truth and honesty. But I'm going to be a social worker. I'm going to go to University of Lethbridge, and I'm going to be a social worker, and I'm going to do something that's going to change this whole world and the way Native children are treated in the system. That was my big thing, right? Growing up with alcoholic parents, I wanted to make sure that children were being treated well.
Yeah.
And then, Gordon was like, well, if you want to be an actor, why don't you just do that? And I was like, I do, I don't know the first thing to do. And he's the one that explained, you go to Vancouver, I will get you an agent when you get there, you get some headshots, and just audition, audition, audition. And I learned from being on the job, because I started in film.
Yeah.
And I learned from watching actors and from, I just didn't go to school. So.
See, that's really interesting. I mean, I'm not advocating don't go to school. That isn't what I don't think either of us mean. But I think it is really an important part of this conversation to maybe filter out there, is that it's not necessary. And of course, you want to find mentors that you can study with and take the odd workshop and like this, or look at other theater, go to the theater and watch people on stages and take some classes with friends in, movement or whatever. Mm-hmm. Or acting classes in the community. But yeah, I think the most important thing is that you, first of all, think of yourself as a creative person. Mm-hmm. And that you have something to offer, because everybody does. It's not like, actors are born and then they find they're moved in careful ways right towards the stage. It's not that way. It's just we stumble into it. Mm-hmm. And however you come to it, there's space for you.
Yeah.
There's space for people to join in. I always used to say, the water is fine. Come on, jump in and let's go for a swim, because it's a great way to learn.
Yeah, it is. Right now, I'm taking a course every Saturday. I'm part of something, and it's women who are directors in theater, learning from other women of color.
Great.
About directing.
Huh.
And one of the things that we've been discussing a lot lately is about decolonizing the theater. And coming from a woman of color, when you think about, because we were like, let's talk about the classics, right? In one of the classes. And I'm like, well, what is the classics? Does that, constitute Shakespeare and, all those old plays? Or why can't we flip that lens and look at, for me, a classic would be a story about Trickster, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And about, we've got so many beautiful stories that come from Indigenous storytelling.
Yeah.
And what does that mean, right? So I think that, for me, it's a really interesting conversation that's happening right now, is that lens of how we see theater.
Yeah.
And whose perspective does that lens go through?
Yeah.
So that's why it's exciting for me to sit here with you, because you've got so much experience in the theater world, and as two women sitting together, I just want to talk about the various ways that we look at theater, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's wonderful to reach into your own background and to reach backwards and find stories that, again, resonate with you. And then you can find your authenticity and your truth. And I mean, it's hard. I don't think either of us are saying, and then that's all you have to do.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, there's a lot more involved, but I think it's a very important conversation because it's bringing, it's helping us move the whole form forward. By form, I mean the theater game, because it's hard to get the audiences that we want. And we need to build those by having the people, the visibility factor and representation on our stages that is speaking through, and the stories that people are going like, well, I'm going to go see that. I grew up on the reservation. I'm going to go see that because even one aspect of it is going to interest me and be fun for me or powerful for me. And that's the game that's afoot.
Yeah, and when you say that there's room.
There's room.
There's room for all of our voices,
Yeah.
and that's the beauty of theater. And that's, when I think about, when I first started in the 80s, there were no Indigenous, there was not a lot of Indigenous presence in film, in television, in theater. When I was 16, going to an all-native school, I got my hands on a play called The Ecstasy of Rita Joe.
Oh, yeah.
By George Riga, who was a non-native playwright, but it was the only play that I could find that had anything to do with Indigenous people, right?
Yeah.
And I just clung on to that book, and I had, auditions at this native school. I'm like, I'm gonna cast this, and I'm gonna direct this, and we're gonna build a set, and we're gonna do live theater, and I had
that's
no
so cool.
idea what I was doing, at all, but I just wanted to.
Did you do it?
Well, I had auditions
Yeah.
in the math room, and everybody showed up, and I casted it, and I said, okay, if you're too shy, you can build set, and you can do this. And I had a small idea, because I did take a drama class at Bowness High before I got kicked out for fighting. And so I had a
You hard ass.
Well, I had no choice, because there was too many people calling me squaw, so I had to fight.
Man.
But anyways, my point is I did take drama, and
Yeah.
then I got, kicked out of the school, and I went to PICS, and I wanted so badly to create a drama program, because there wasn't any. And so I casted it. Everybody had their roles. There was a role of a policeman in this play, in this George Riga play. And we had an actual police officer at our school who would come and, just talk and stuff. I casted him, and he agreed to be in it. It was so cool. So I was ready, and I made a whole rehearsal schedule. It was like every day after school for 2 weeks, and then we were going to do the play on stage, as if we could get it done in 2 weeks. But anyways, first day of rehearsal happens, and nobody shows up. I was so disappointed.
Oh, you
Yeah,
poor little
anyway.
thing. That breaks my heart. I was getting excited about the part where you...
I know that I got everyone on stage, but anyways.
They just didn't come.
It was fun auditioning, I think, but they just didn't want to commit when they saw the rehearsal schedule, I guess. I don't know.
Oh, man.
Anyways, my point is, here we are,
Yeah.
many, many, many years later, and I love theater. I love.
Yeah. Well, you're darn good at it, Miss Thing.
Well, so are you, Denise, and it takes one to know one.
yeah.
So I really appreciate you coming on the show. I want to ask you a little bit about your experience with MT7
Okay.
as coming into the circle. You came in when we did the Bella. We had just lost Michael and Narcissus and Rico.
Yeah.
It was a very emotional time for all of us. We weren't sure if we were going to keep the company going, if we were going to fold it. Blake and I were really doing everything we could to take care of emotionally. The cast was, we were all having a really hard time. And you came into this, that year. What was that like for you when you first walked into the rehearsal space?
Oh, it was hard and sad, and I remember also just, going into prayer for myself and understanding they're right here. You know, they're not, it depends on our belief systems, but I wasn't fearful that they were now a non-entity in the universe. So for me, I felt their presence. I felt Michael with us. I felt Richard with us. And you know, I'd known Richard since I was 13. He was my first partner, my first boyfriend. And but I was also excited because it was work I wanted to do. And I was ready. You know what I mean? I was grounded and I was ready. And it was an interesting circle. And I was very grateful for the leadership that you and Blake were exhibiting, because I thought it was, you know, not always easy. Like you say, it was an emotional time. People were pretty traumatized. And I felt like I was growing. You know, I was listening a lot. We were doing a lot of talking. And I wanted to be of service really badly. And I remember, you know, offering that up in one of the first introductions or times I was asked if I'd like to say anything. And you know, I said I'd really just like to be part of it and serve in whatever way I can. And I sort of remember Troy saying, you know, all right, we're putting you to work. And it was like, I'm here. And I felt ready.
Nice.
Yeah.
I remember Blake coming to me and he says, I want to bring Denise. And I was like, great, let's bring Denise in. And what can we, because we already had an idea of how the show was, the aesthetic of the show. How can we fit her in to create an important historical part of what happened here in southern Alberta? So then you and Blake had a conversation about that, and how did you guys come up with your piece? Tell us about your piece, because we're going to actually go into the video of it soon.
Oh, cool. Well, you know, it was just it seemed obvious. Princess Louise Caroline, Alberta. And it was like where we got our name, the province got its settler name from. And I only had to do this much research to be quite fascinated by her. In those particularly racist days, it's the beginning of the Indian Act, and you know, I found it really intriguing to think about her and her Governor General husband arriving from Britain, and she never came here, even though she was our namesake, until I don't think she ever made it. And so that was a big part for me of like the humor, was that she was, with the advantage of being dead and time passing, she had an omniscient view that could allow her to comment on the odious racist behavior of her time that had taken us to where we'd gotten to, and poke fun at her and where she came from and the crown. But also, you know, I don't really believe in ever not respecting who I'm playing, no matter who it is. So I found ways to, in the writing even, to just give her a little bit of a knowing eye about really what she had come from and the forces that she had represented and what they had carried out. And that, I think, was what brought the humor to it, was to allow her to be winking at everyone like, oh no, I know what happened with this whole game. So that seemed to be something that everyone could respond to.
Okay. So in saying that, Denise, I want to cut to a video of what you created for Making Treaty 7,
Okay.
and then we can talk about it after and dissect it a bit.
Okay.
Cool. Okay.
As long as I can make a bargain in a perfect English garden. All that noise was so annoying, so I found a dose of poison. As long as I can shoot and plow and drill and blast away, I promise you that I'll improve this vast terrain with every passing day.
Good evening to one and all. I am the dead fairy godmother of this province. You are named after me, Princess Louise Caroline Alberta, daughter of dead Queen Victoria. Mummy. Mummy. I never liked my name, but after dear Daddy, Prince Albert, died, it just stuck. Oh, well, we're all dead now, and I cavort about here in the afterlife with Bullhead and Crowfoot and MacLeod. And you know, with hindsight, I have 20/20 vision. Can you imagine the foolishness of my life? Born into a family of royals in the 19th century, Mummy being the kind of lady who thought it appropriate to mourn in ugly black gowns, not for the respectable 2 years after Daddy died, but for the rest of her life. Feeding her grief into a 50-inch waistline. Not a good look, Mummy. Yet she lived to the ripe old age of 82 years. And when I say ripe, I mean ripe. Oh, I wish I were born now. I want to be Will and Kate's child, Charlotte. Much more my style, 21st century all the way, darlings. I did live for a while in Canada, but I never had the wherewithal to make it out here to my namesake district, the District of Alberta. I was too embarrassed to show my royal face. I mean, Alberta was a stupid name for this place, especially given all the marvelous names of the districts surrounding you. The District of Saskatchewan, the District of Athabasca, the District of Assiniboia. But oh no, you poor sods had to be named after me, Alberta. And I never even visited you. I was far more interested in the suffragettes back home and in my sculpting and in my sculptor man friend than I was in you. Sorry about that. The whole naming thing was the idea of my husband, the Marquis of Lorne. Speaking of ridiculous names. Mind you, it was a rather gay name, and he was a rather gay fellow. He came along as Governor General in 1878, just after you signed on as treaty folk, and he did try to learn about the Indians and to travel about, but then we had that nasty sleigh riding accident, as one does when one is unaccustomed to riding about in sleighs. And really, I do apologize, but I rather wanted to go home and be comforted by the sculptor man friend, which ended almost as badly as the sleigh ride, what with his dropping dead after one of our more vigorous conversations. Everyone was so uncomfortable about all you red people in Canada back then. Well, and all the yellow people, and the Jews, and the Irish. Honestly, it was terribly unpleasant and hateful. Just after we arrived, that drunken boor, Sir John A., was appointed the Minister of Aboriginal Affairs. And my, what an imagination he showed, eh? The Indian Act, residential schools, and that perfectly Kafkaesque Department of Indian Affairs. Sorry to say, he survived the test of time quite nicely, what was still being so highly credited as the father of Confederation, blah-de-blah-de-blah. And yes, fine, everyone was a racist back then, but he was a particularly nasty piece of work, wasn't he? Playing it both ways, always boasting about his native chums, while at the same time, when accused of wasting money feeding the Cree, he bravely defended himself to the House of Commons, stating, "To save money and reduce expenses, my agents withheld food from those Indians till they were on the verge of starvation." Excellent economic policy, one I see being proudly upheld to this very day. Bravo, politicians. I can tell you from the grave that there is nothing quite as comforting as knowing that in your lifetime you balanced the bloody books, no matter the human sacrifice. Anyways, enough of all that. I just dropped by to bring greetings from the Crown. Nice to be here in spirit, even if I failed in my body in my lifetime. Better late than never, eh? Ta-ta for now, darlings. Thank you so much for having me.
Wow.
Right?
She's a piece of work.
How does it feel watching, after all these years, watching that piece?
Oh, it's interesting. I couldn't find the text today. I was looking through my notes and it was like, where's this text? So because I just wanted to read it before I came. But yeah, I liked performing it. I don't know about you. I think I'm old enough now. I don't really ever react to seeing myself. I mean, there's moments where you're like, and moments where you're like, But yeah, it's not the same as when you're younger and you're so self-conscious and you see yourself on screen and you're like, oh my God, yeah, ooh, ooh, oh. Do you have any of that left?
No, but my daughter hates seeing herself on screen or hearing her voice. Like, she'll audition and I'll shoot her and she will not watch any of the takes. So I have to go through it and go, okay, this one's the one I'll send to your agent. She hates seeing herself. I don't care. It works or it doesn't, I don't know.
Well, yeah, I think, that's one of the great things about getting older. You really accept, and I'm not saying that I think everything I'm doing is terrific. It's just that I don't judge it anymore.
Yeah,
And
that's a good place to be.
Yeah, you just go, oh, well, it is what it is, and I performed it. And I couldn't hear on there, but I remember it going well. Like, I remember people really laughing and having a great time with just reacting to her.
Yeah. And that was the beauty of Making Treaty 7 is the audience, everybody could relate to something on stage. And I remember us getting all these letters from Indigenous people watching the show going, I have never seen my stories on stage. I've never seen an Indigenous person on stage in my life. And I walked out feeling so proud of who I was. Yeah. But then we've also got, people in the audience that, who are non-Indigenous watching going, wow, that's something that I didn't know about my people, my culture, or,
Yeah.
Something I was talking about the other day is I know when we did Making Treaty 7 before, a lot of the non-Native performers played characters that were not so savory. So I'm thinking, when we do this new one, how do we go about that? Because that was that. But now, I want everybody to be able to speak their truth and be who they are. But I guess what I'm getting to is white guilt. There's a lot of white guilt out there, and I don't want to prosper on that with Making Treaty 7.
Wow, now that's a radical thing to say, Michelle.
It is.
You're talking in a radical manner that I thank you for, because I think, it's repetitive. It's the same story over and over. We understand guilt, and it's limiting. And this project was about expanding and growth for everyone. And so I think you have to be careful of the stories repeating too often, especially if they're stories of the stereotypical bad white guy and the stereotypical, Louise Caroline Alberta is sort of a cartoon character, and I can get away with that, but you couldn't do too much of that. You want to balance it.
Yeah, but on flipping that over, Indigenous people played a lot of stereotypes for many, many, many years too. So,
yeah,
maybe
it's you're right.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, I just think that in the long run, for the greater good of the project, you want everyone working on their A game and speaking their truth. And so you can still play a very, very dangerous character with a very bad past. But I think it's an interesting observation you've made, and a kind of a radically interesting thing to think about, shifting the focus into strength and growth, and taking people beyond guilt into responsibility.
That's it. That's exactly it. Because guilt keeps you stuck.
Right.
And there's so many times I've had non-Native people come up to me and they're just like, oh my God, I'm debilitated because I'm so guilty. And it's like, that's not going to help anything by you being in that place of, I am the worst person in the whole world. No, it's not about that. It's about what can we do together to create something that's going to create change.
Yes, I know that that's what the power of MT7 was.
Yeah.
Just all of us literally working together, literally every day showing up in that rehearsal room and working together and honoring each other, and that wouldn't have worked if all of us settlers were, I'm so guilty, I feel so bad. I mean, obviously you're hearing stories that just make you cringe.
Yeah.
And you're bearing witness to things that are very painful,
Yeah.
and that you're ashamed of, but you're also understanding that you've got to be active for change to occur.
Yeah.
You can't just quake in your guilt and your sorrow and your grief.
Yeah. That's true.
I mean, nobody can, right?
No.
Indigenous people can't either. We all have to move forward together.
Yeah, and that's my point is I don't want to get stuck in that place. I want to be able to grow as a company and to have everybody speak their stories in truth. And to me, that's part of what the legacy of Making Treaty 7 was about.
Yeah.
It's indigenously led, settler supported, no matter what. Yeah.
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 Very cool.
Yeah. It's a good time too to be able to be a part of that, because there's a lot of change going on in the theater world right now, right?
In the world.
In the whole world, definitely in the whole world, but also in the theater space.
Yeah.
I mean, I look around, I think about 20 years ago when, again, going to this class that I'm taking, and they kept saying, what is the classics? And I kept saying, well, as an Indigenous person, we've only had maybe 30 years of published work.
Isn't that
right?
wild?
Before that, it was oral. It was not, I mean, we had our own storytelling and our own theater of, dance and stuff, but it wasn't considered the classics, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's a really interesting aspect of so I'm going to ask you, what constitutes storytelling in your mind?
Well, some of the technical structuring, like a beginning, that will inspire the listener to continue listening. So storytelling to me is an event that takes language, whatever language that may be, and translates through human spirit, humor, maybe some ability, some magic, some kind of device that will hold the listener and allow them to change, to listen to something and feel like and these changes can be tiny, incremental. They don't have to be life-changing, but a sense of feeling like you learned, that's a good story, or you got an insight into another human being that you maybe didn't have, or you suddenly understood something about human nature. Those are the elements that I think a really great story has. And so even the archetypes, not the stereotypes, but the archetypes from all cultures, that's what they're there for. And it's how we use them in our stories.
Can you explain archetypes to any of the viewers who might be listening, what you think it is?
Well, like trickster is an archetype. A being that is recognizable as a symbolic kind of person. A hero is an archetype, right? A villain is an archetype. A king, a queen.
So it's somebody who has high
chief.
status? Is that
no, I think an archetype can occupy high status or low status, but they have a recognizable traits.
Okay.
Right? So, I mean, I think the flip of the archetype is the stereotype, where it kind of falls into that repetitious kind of a thing. But throughout ancient history and all Indigenous cultures and storytelling use archetypes very powerfully. The ancient Greeks did, the Romans did, and when we look back, certainly African culture uses archetypes. So when we look back through ancient cultures, you'll see those archetypes emerging, and they share traits.
Interesting, hey?
The fool, the wise fool, the trickster, the wise fool, tricking powerful people, making them laugh or laughing at them and tricking them in ways that allow everyone around them to see the truth about them. And maybe themselves, see the truth about themselves.
Wow, that's really cool. I know in Sundance, when last time I went to Sundance, to where my family is from, they have this character that comes out on the last day, and it's like a clown in a way, and they go around and they, everyone's like, oh no, here they come, right? And they're wrapped up in burlap, you can't see their faces, and they disrupt camps, and they steal your chairs, and they throw all your clothes out. It's hilarious, but they go around and they mirror you, right? I remember one time I was in Ottawa, and I witnessed this performance that just blew my mind. And I just want to share this because I remember so clearly. It was 1992. It was the Beyond Survival, it was called, which was this huge gathering of Indigenous artists from around the world. And it was at the museum in Ottawa. And there was this amazing artist by the name of Maka Kleist, and she was from Greenland. She was Inuit. And they did this incredible performance that literally changed my whole world. They came out, we were all sitting in the part of the museum with all the totem poles, I think it's the bottom floor with all the big windows. I don't know if you've ever been there. But anyways, it's a really beautiful space, huge. And everybody was at these round tables. It was a dinner, and it was all these Indigenous people from all over the world. And on stage, it was empty. There was three little, a mirror and a little thing with a drawer, like a little desk and a chair. And Maka and these two men walk out on stage, and they are wearing traditional Inuit seal skin, this outfit that they had on, and it was very plain, but all three of them sat down, and then they began to put this makeup on their face, and it was black, and then black here. And everyone was mesmerized because they weren't talking, they weren't looking at us, they were just looking at themselves, and then they took a bone and they put it in their mouth, and their mouth went like this with the black makeup. And then all of a sudden they look and they break the fourth wall, and they stand up, and they come out from behind their things, and everyone's like, what the hell, what's going on? And they begin to come into the audience. And there's about 400 people in the audience, right? And they're all at these tables. And what they would do is they would see you across the room, and they would lock eyes with you. And they wouldn't take their eyes off, and they would go around the tables, and they would be coming for you, and you'd just be going, oh gosh, oh God, here they come. And then they would come up and they'd start humping you. And they would like sexually be doing all these crazy things to you, and you were like, oh God. And then they would turn and they would find someone else, and they would stare at them, and they would go over there. And you figured out after a little while that what happened is when they locked eyes with you, if you stared at them, they would turn to someone else. Right? But if you went, they would come and they would humiliate you. And it was this old Inuit thing. It was like an old theater thing.
A theater game.
It was a theater game, right? And you ended up picking up on it after a while.
Wow.
But it was amazing, and they didn't say a word.
Oh my God.
And it was just so beautiful. And it also brought me to think about how colonization hadn't affected them in the same way it affected us, to erase our sexual stories.
Right. Wow, that's really interesting. Wow.
It was super interesting because it was such a huge part of, like I watched Maka do some other things, and sexuality was still a huge part of it. And that was because Christianity hadn't crushed it for them, right?
Yeah.
So anyways, for them to come and, the humping and stuff.
Pretty shocking.
Yeah, it
pretty
was
funny.
Beautiful though. It was just so funny.
Oh, what
funny.
a gas.
Yeah. Anyways.
How old were you?
Oh gosh, back then I was probably like 20 or 19 or something.
Wow.
I don't know, but it was a real honor. And then I got one more quick story, because now that I've told you that one, I gotta bring this one up. The next morning I'm sitting in the lobby of the hotel at this Indigenous conference, And I'm waiting for the shuttle to come to bring me to a workshop. And there's a man sitting there from Australia. He's Aborigine, and he has his didgeridoo. And he puts his didgeridoo down beside him, and then he's in this conversation with this other guy, and he's just, you know, like they're both talking, and this other guy is from, he's Sami from Norway, I believe, right? Sami?
Yeah.
I don't,
Is it Finland?
yeah.
I can't remember either.
I can't remember. Oh God, Elmaya
We'll have to get our
Tailfeathers.
fact checkers on that.
Yeah, I know. Elmaya Tailfeathers, please let me know, because she is half Sami. I don't mean to disrespect
I think
them.
it's Finland, but I don't know either.
Anyways,
okay,
if
doesn't
you're
matter.
watching, anybody out there,
Yeah,
if you
tell
know
us.
the Sami people. But this man was Sami, the indigenous, the Aborigine man was talking to him. And I'm watching, and the elevator doors open, and out comes Mucka Kleist. And I'm like, I'm just sitting there watching everything. He's talking. She walks over, and she's, you know, got her clown sense about her, and she sees the didgeridoo. She picks it up. He's not looking. And there's, you know, maybe 20 of us sitting there. And she puts it between her legs. And she starts clowning with this didgeridoo, right? And she's going like this. And I'm like, oh my God, right? And she's laughing quietly. He's not paying attention. Everyone's like, oh, geez. Elevator door opens again. And out steps this Maori woman from New Zealand, from Aotearoa. And in Aotearoa, women, there's very special teachings about, you know, you can't sit on tables, you can't step over children, this is your power zone. You don't put anything there, and it's, I spent a few months there, and we were strictly taught, you know, by the Maori women that you be very aware, right? So this Maori woman comes out of the elevator, and she sees Mucka with the didgeridoo between her legs, and she runs over and she grabs the didgeridoo and she pulls it, and she goes, what are you doing? This is a sacred object. And then all of a sudden the Aborigine man turns around, he sees the two women, he grabs his didgeridoo from the Maori woman, he goes, not even me wife has touched me didgeridoo. I was just like, oh my gosh, all of these indigenous people all around this didgeridoo. It was so funny. I'm gonna do a short film about that someday.
Now that is hilarious. That'd be a great film, and that's a good line. Not even me wife's touched me didgeridoo.
You can play him.
I'll play him.
I'm kidding.
Please?
Oh God. Anyways.
Oh, that's pretty good. Yeah, that'd be a good little film.
Yeah.
That's all. Just like you say.
Yeah.
The story's happening. He's talking. What's the?
Yeah.
Nice.
The elevator door opening
Nice.
and closing. Yeah. And it's funny because all of those indigenous people had a different point of view of how they treated a sacred object.
Sure. And the final camera pans to you.
Yeah. Yeah. So, getting back to our conversation.
Yeah.
What was one of the best memories you had in your experiences with Making Treaty 7, whether it's on stage or off stage?
Oh, well, I really enjoyed working with Cherished Violet Blood. We had some pretty powerful stuff together, and so that's some nice memories for me. I felt like we started clicking, and it was really fun to have a new colleague, and she's a rockin' actor, so I really enjoyed.
She's great.
Yeah, I really enjoyed working with her, and I guess when we were on tour, I felt really, really good about getting to Ottawa and finishing that vision that Michael and Narcissus had of getting us to the NAC and getting this piece performed in the capital.
Yeah.
That was powerful, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was beautiful.
I mean, and it was just so extraordinarily received. I mean, those people were blown away, and they were blown away by the actual performances, and they were blown away by the vision, and they were blown away by the vibe that the whole company brought with them. And I just remember the reception afterwards. It was like electric. And, observing, just looking around me and thinking, this is wild.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's pretty potent stuff for me. I also have a really sweet, sweet memory of Alana and I working, I think that was the first time Alana had done her spoken word at the Bella.
It was.
And it was huge. You know, a lot of stuff was moving through her, and I don't think Alana will mind me telling this because it was so beautiful. And so we were just sitting in a car, and she was just saying her lines and speaking her poetry to me, and it was just like, it was beautiful. She is so beautiful, and it was so sweet, and I just felt really glad to be able to just sit with her and say, like, bring it, and to hear her bring it, and then what we saw happen.
Yes, and she actually spoke about that when she did her episode of Istotsi about her first time, about when we were all sitting in rehearsal. We were at that warehouse space. It was the Quest rehearsal space, and she was standing up in front of all of us, and she was speaking the words of her poem, and then she just burst into tears.
She was weeping.
Yeah, and it was like something opened up in her, and just she allowed herself to be vulnerable.
Oh yeah.
And she felt that support. And then, you know, 2 weeks later, she's on stage in front of hundreds of people, sharing that story like
an old pro.
Right. It was so beautiful.
Doing her gorgeous dancing. And
right.
She was in full ceremonial clothes, and it was like, oh.
And that's the beautiful part, was watching these young artists who, you know, we had Alana, and then we had a young guy from the Blood Reserve who came up and spent some time with us. Corey Beaver from Morley came and spent some time with us, and we just like nurtured them so that they could shine their greatest light. Right? We just loved them through the whole thing.
Well, yeah, it was easy. They were pretty lovable, and you know, that vulnerability piece is, maybe that's really of interest to the viewers too, is that, you know, it's to be expected. It doesn't ever really leave us. You know, I think we all are still vulnerable no matter how much experience we have and how hardy we get in our practice. You still have that assailing vulnerability sometimes, just as you're getting ready to say your piece, or, you know, you have to be willing to accept that. And it's a certain kind of courage that you got to take on. And I just remember watching her in particular, just gathering her strength and getting on that stage.
I remember for Imagine, when she would prepare, she was one of the younger members, my daughter. I remember her standing backstage getting ready to do her piece, and she would always say, you know, I'm bringing all of my grandmothers with me on stage, and that's why I'm not afraid.
Yeah.
You know, and I remember that inspiring me, and that was when she was like 12 years old or something.
Oh, was she that young?
She was 12, I think, her first, when we did Heritage Park.
Wow.
Yeah. So something I want to dive into also while we have you is talking a little bit about preparation. Because right now what I'm hoping is that there's young viewers who've been writing into us and talking about auditioning. So by watching these episodes, we are hoping to provide skills and various ways of expressing yourself creatively for these auditions that we want to create in June. And part of the auditioning phase is about doing some research for what inspires you, for what your passion is inside of you, and how I just want to talk to you a little bit about how you prepare. So either with MT7 or with another show, you know, Blake came to you, said, I want you to do something about the Queen, if that's, you know, if that's somewhere we can start with. How did you prepare to get into that?
Well, I keep, this sounds a little bit poncy. It makes me sound like a little bit of a, you know, prim school teacher, but I keep my instrument tuned. So I'm always preparing.
I hear you.
You know, so that's part of the game for, I think, you know, you become very fascinated by being your most efficient self. And so I'm always kind of keeping it all tuned up.
Yep.
And when I get a specific task, then I think about all the elements I'm going to need to carry through with that task. And really important, right at the beginning, I tell myself, I'm not at the end yet. I got to go through all the hard gathering of the elements. I've got to put together a big pile of them. I have to go through that pile and carefully pluck from it. I have to take those assembled elements and keep distilling them. If I'm going to write, I have to make sure that I have little, reminders of different things I want to say around me. So a combination of giving myself permission is the most important starting point. It's like we all have a right to do this. And we all have a right to do this, to speak our truth, to do our art, to bring our creative selves to the game. It's not yet part of our business how good we are. We just have to be prepared to begin.
Good. I love that.
Right? That's the most important thing. Prepared to begin with humility, with humbleness, understanding that it's going to take a lot of repetition before you're really ready to give it to the audience. But there's each phase. So for me, it's all about making sure I've got all the elements I need. And if I keep identifying, oh, you know what? Now I have to go back because I actually need this in order to do this and move on to that. So not being afraid of that. Not worrying that, oh, it's overwhelming, I can't do it. But just trusting. You got to trust yourself that, okay, just do this little bit. I'm just going to do this little thing, and then I'll get that part done, and then I will move on to the next bit. And that can be very, very difficult if you feel like you're groping in the dark. But if some of these folks are looking back into are looking around them, I call that divining. You divine from everything around you, like, a water diviner, right? And you just wait until it speaks to you, and then you have to do these steps of preparing. So maybe you have been sitting like this for a long time, watching a lot of screens, say, these days. Maybe number one thing you're going to have to do is move, breathe, stand up, lay on the ground, roll around, go for a walk, be in nature, go to the land. Whatever you have to do, you got to do that, and make sure that the instrument is there for you, because it can be very, very debilitating if you're cold and held. And we need to be open and relaxed to the best of our abilities. Right? It's not like you can get relaxed, but you want to be able to call on it and keep going back to breath and keep going back to techniques for just, whether it's for you, learning a few little stretches that you can do, dancing wildly, putting on your headphones and making sure you've sweated it out and you've got your favorite song on, and I would suggest to all our viewers that that's a really great technique, using the music that you love to help let your body get ready. Then moving into, the spirit and the mind. Identifying what it is you're really wanting to say. And keep it simple. Don't get too complicated. Just find something true and say that.
I love that. In a past episode, one of the things that we were talking about with the viewers was to do unedited writing.
Yeah.
Right? Sitting down with a pen and paper and just letting it come out and just going. Do you do that? Have you done that?
Oh, yes.
And
we call it splashing it out.
Okay.
That's one of Blake's terms. And, luckily for me, he was a director of mine for all these years. And in process, one of his terms is, we'll just go splash it out. And again, it doesn't mean it's the finished thing you're splashing out. You're just you're generating performative material. That's what you're doing. And you need, in order usually to hone it, to get it down to like that, you need about that much. So you just want to generate as much stuff as you can to choose from. And then you want to keep editing it, you know, going like, you know what, that actually is getting in my way. I'm going to put that aside for another project. This is what's speaking through all the time to me. I'm going to stick with this, and how can I do this well? You know, how can I speak with my truth?
Right.
How can I ground myself?
That's a big one.
Yeah, it's hard, but trust that you can do it if you breathe. Get your body part of it. Take those breaths. And, you know, have trust, have faith in yourselves.
We have a question that came in from a viewer, Stacy De Silva, who's done some work with Making Treaty 7. Lots of love out to Stacy. She's wondering if you can look back on your career and talk about one of the most difficult characters you've ever had to play.
I played Mata Hari. She was a courtesan spy who was put to death by the French in World War II for spying. And I got so emotionally lost in her pain, and a part of the process was, or the part of the playwriting was that by the time I'm approaching the where I'm being put to death, being shot, executed, Michael and Andy played, you know, interrogators, and they were screaming at me, and I had to really, I was completely wrapped up in, you know, this the pain that she was going through because she was being falsely accused, and it was becoming readily apparent to her that she was going to be put to death. And that pain and anxiety, I didn't let go. So I became completely locked in her anxiety and pain and stress. And I came off stage one day, and this was, we were playing, we were in, and I began to feel confused at the beginning of the play. I was kind of playing the end before the beginning, and I couldn't shake out of it. And I came off stage, and I was just a mess. And my colleague, Elizabeth Stepkowski, said, you know, you just got yelled at. I said, I don't know what's wrong with me. I can't get a grip here. She said, well, you just got yelled at for, you know, 15 minutes and then murdered. And I was like, oh. And I began to just find the time after to de-stress, to let it out. And that was once I learned that character stopped being incredibly hard to play, and it was fine. Well, first of all, I remembered that I was acting. You know, so it was like, well, that was good. I wasn't actually Mata Hari, just so you know. And that was a very important lesson for me, Stacy. Like I'd forgot, and I was teaching movement. I mean, I wasn't a kid. I knew these things, but I just got wrapped up in my character so deeply.
So where is that line between when you are playing your character, and I know for myself, there's been many characters I've played where I have to actually leave the theater or the film set and put her away, and because it's really hard sometimes to let that go and to keep that line there. So where is that for you?
Oh, I think for me it's like in the dressing room after. You know, the line...
sorry to interrupt you, but is there a ceremony or a ritual that you do to leave your character?
Yeah, and it's go into the bathroom on my own. Like go somewhere and not be in the fun and the wildness of the dressing room.
Yeah, I've been in that dressing room.
You know, like, so I just, you know, like to take myself into the bathroom and shut the door and then just decompress. And sometimes it's a little longer than others. Sometimes it means crying my face off. Sometimes it means just being silent. It's almost an honoring too, but I think it's very important to for all of us to remember that it's a tough gig. It's hard.
It is.
And we don't want to be carrying more stress or anxiety than we need to, because it's already stressful and anxious making. And so you want to use that, and these are the skills that we need to develop by finding a practice for ourselves. We need to develop our own practice that we use as an individual that's particular to ourselves, and use that practice to keep ourselves safe so that we can go as deep and dark as we need to, but we're okay.
We're
come back
just
up.
acting.
We're just acting.
Yeah, we're just acting here. Just
It's
acting.
pretend.
And that makes me want to segue into, we are going to be offering a workshop this weekend. It's been a while since Istotsi has gone into workshop phase. So on Saturday afternoon, we agreed to a 1 o'clock camera, right? It's going to be going 1 o'clock live, Mountain Standard, but we have a special guest coming to the studio to work with side by side with Denise Clarke, and that's going to be Telly James. We're so excited to have Telly, and this is going to be about 2 artists talking about their approach to the work and their process. Do you want to, I know you offer something here for many, many years to students all over called the Lab. Do you want to talk a little bit about your lab, and then we're going to go into the workshop of this weekend. Sorry to separate the two.
That's okay. Well, they inform one another.
Yeah.
So the lab was something I designed that began in 1997. That was a response to people whenever we were on tour saying, you know, how do you make this kind of work? Like, how do you do this? What are you doing? How does this happen? And I began to realize, well, I think there's a place. Certainly there was 20 odd years ago. There was nothing like what the lab was that I designed, which was a place for all kinds of artists, not necessarily the young ones, but people all at any stage of their career who had some training, who had been, and some experience, to come together and still rejuvenate their practice and to explore personal aesthetic. So it was a place where you could come and do a physical practice in the mornings, and then you could do your writing practice, and then you could do, you know, think about the visuality of theater making, and then work on a small performance of your own, a 10-minute piece. And this all happened in 3 weeks at the Big Secret Theater, and it was a really concentrated way, a boot camp. And that it's finishing up and now moving into its new life. And you know, check out One Yellow Rabbit in some time, and you'll hear all about that. But that really began to make me it was like an active research place for me, a laboratory for my own active research as a teacher and as an artist. And so I understood this is what I really wanted people to take away was a fresh idea of their own practice. What do they need as an individual to keep themselves well, and to deal with how hard our business is, and also to wake up some skills. And so our workshop on Saturday, I'm so thrilled Telly's coming. Now this guy is a phenomenon as an actor. He's not really acting very much these days, but that guy is something else, and he's an amazing artist. And so I'm thrilled. I had the honor of directing him a few years ago, and I was just dazzled, as I was in Making Treaty 7, watching that hilarious piece he performed.
Yeah,
God,
what was it called? Confessions of an Apple.
I was going to say something about an apple.
Yeah.
God, he's so good, so smart, so cool. So cool. And anyway, I'm thrilled because I think we're going to talk about practices and approaches to work and process and acting and directing and writing and how we all both feel about that. And you know, I'll ask him questions, he can ask me, and hopefully it's of use to some of the viewers. You know, some of the gang out there can glean a few cool tips.
I'm excited about just the process, like just Every single actor has their own process, and I took your lab. One of the things I loved about it was the yoga, that you would, every single day, we would come into this big secret, and this beautiful music would be playing, and I've never done yoga. I just,
Really?
I'm not a yoga person.
Oh, I
That
wouldn't
was,
have known that.
oh yeah, I mean, it just is not something that I practiced.
I mean, I wouldn't have known that because I watched you every day and I wasn't going like, she's never done this before. You seemed quite adept.
Never. I'd never done yoga. But now, from doing the lab, I find there's moments in my life where I'll just go, okay, I just gotta calm down and get into my body, and that's what it taught me about, like, being in the lab was about getting into your body, being friends with your body, and then, of course, all the other things were really, really, really helpful. And for me, the beauty also was that making Treaty 7 was such a beautiful mixture of One Yellow Rabbit's process and Indigenous process of how we did theater and how One Yellow Rabbit created theater. And so there's such a special bond between the two. Yeah, it's really important. And Michael was, just so generous with bringing you guys into our lives, like Andy and Blake and you and Rico, and so I love that, and I love that on Saturday it's going to be Telly and you, Telly as an amazing artist in his own right, and you and just comparing processes and notes and body and all the stuff.
Well, and just really for me always I love the word lab. Because I love the name of a lab, and I always apply it from the big lab of a laboratory where you can experiment and gain knowledge about something, but there's also a lab in your own skin. So we can make a lab inside our own skin, and that is, again, our creative right to just put on, investigate, and explore and experiment all with what you've got.
Yeah. So we're going to do like a mini lab on Saturday.
Mini lab, but hopefully it'll just inspire people to go like, wait, I'm going to go try that. I'm going to do that.
Yeah, I love that. So we got another question from Stacy De Silva for you. She wants to know, how do you take care of yourself and process when you have post-production blues at the end of a show? Aww. That's an amazing question.
Yeah, it is. Well, yoga, moving, walking, fresh air, and I feed myself. I nourish myself, and I'm very, very. I treat myself like a good friend.
Nice.
I just do whatever I need to do. I listen to myself. I talk to myself. I write. And I find other things to feed me, new poetry, or I just, maybe I decide all I want to do is read a book or watch RuPaul. You know what I mean? I just do whatever I really feel like as a good friend you would say, why don't you just watch RuPaul? Just relax on the couch for the whole next day, 2 days, 3 days. Or I think you need to get out there and go for a good walk and get some air and, whatever it is. I reach out to people I love and talk.
Yeah. I cry.
Yeah, I do that. There's some tears.
Right. I know the post-production blues are really difficult. And for anyone watching that, what we're talking about specifically is that when you have rehearsals, whether it's on a film or on theater, you become very entwined with the people you're working with, and you share, and the thing is, you have to break down those barriers, because sometimes you're playing, lovers or sisters. Yeah. One, quick story, I remember I was working on a movie in the States, and I was playing the sister of Benicio del Toro. And I remember the first day on set, and I was so freaked out because it was Benicio del Toro, and he's so frickin' hot. I was just like, oh my God, I'm playing his sister. And we were sitting in a scene. We'd been in the makeup trailer, and we met an hour before, and then all of a sudden we're sitting in this scene together where we're playing brother and sister. And I'm like, I was freaked out. And he says to me, like, we blocked it, and then they were doing the lighting, and we stepped out of the set. And we're standing out there, and he's like, what is wrong? Are you okay? You seem really nervous. And I'm like, oh my God, you are like my favorite actor in the whole world, and I'm freaking out right now because I just have nothing but love for you, and I'm just really freaked out. And he goes, well, what do you need to feel better? And I said, what I need is a hug, because there's a bubble around me and there's a bubble around you, and it's never, we need to break that right away, because we got to jump into this thing of that we've known each other our whole lives, and I have never even touched you.
Yeah.
You know, like,
Yeah.
So we sat in the hall and we just hugged for like a minute, like 2 minutes of just holding each other, and I just had to feel him, and then all of a sudden I just went, okay, I can do this now, right?
Yeah.
And it's about breaking down those walls and creating these false relationships with each other.
Yeah,
And-
and
yeah.
you do have to listen to yourself. You
Yeah.
do have to listen to yourself and go, what do I need? And then you have to practice doing that so that you can go, I need to breathe.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the last time I asked myself this, I realized I need contact. I need to feel not these bubbles, and that's the great advantage again of a little bit of experience, but this information is available to everybody to think about and put into play in their lives, whether or not it's for a play or a theater or a film.
Yeah.
And,
But you end up, I guess the point of me name dropping Benicio was that
please do. More,
But-
please.
Well, my point is we built this beautiful brother-sister relationship over 6 weeks of working together and catching each other and, being there for each other. And at the end of it, I was in so much pain about leaving that character, first of all, and that relationship with this person. Because that when it's, when it's wrapped, you're not going to probably see, well, we saw each other at the premiere, blah, 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 but we're not going to be spending that amount of time together. And I bawled the whole way, from, we were shooting in Montana, and I had to drive back to Alberta. It was like a 4-hour drive, and I just cried the whole time. I was just like, oh my gosh, I mourned my character, right? And that's, I think, kind of what Stacey's talking about too, is just, you get so
that's
attached.
an interesting word, mourn. I mean, I try really hard now too to understand that, like the people we know who pass and move on into the next place, they're not gone.
Mm-hmm. True.
You don't have to. It's not something that you have to actually slam a door on. You can bring it with you.
Yeah.
A little bit, I mean,
Yeah.
you can sort of hold on to it and go, okay, that's part of me now.
Yeah, that's true. Like, those characters will always be there, but I mean, that certain dynamic of you interacting with the other people on that set, you make such good friends on,
yeah.
theater or whatever. It's about having to break down barriers super fast and get to know each other and create bonds, and then all of a sudden it's super fast, it's over.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's interesting.
probably really unhealthy in a lot
Right?
of respects. It's sort of like, that's a messy thing to do with a life. But on the other hand, I think it's also really good training because, non-attachment to everybody and everything is very helpful in dealing with the suffering that we all have to go through.
Those are true words. And in saying all of that, we have one more comment from an audience member. It's Marvin Key. He said that I missed you two beautiful beings. And we miss you too. I can't wait to hang out with you,
Marvin.
right?
Wow,
Yeah,
beautiful. Yeah, wouldn't that be nice to just be able to go and hear him play? And
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah, Marvin's a great member of the musical scene here in Calgary, and he was
Yeah.
also a member of the band with
Yeah.
Making Treaty 7, him and Chris Demeanor and Shant.
He's another super cool guy, Marvin.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he totally is. So I think we can wind things down now. Yeah, we've gotten to know a little bit more about Denise Clarke and your process and what you're going to offer us on Saturday. And
Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this. I really have. It's just, like I say, it was so amazing to be coming and being live together and hanging out, and thank you. And boy, I really hope to meet some of you out there, see you on the stage.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we're going to ask everyone who knows anybody who wants to be an artist. Please watch the episodes and stay tuned to Making Treaty 7 Facebook and Instagram and our website. We're going to be announcing the dates for the auditioning. We're going to go into a beautiful creation series, and we're going to be again, bringing Blake Brooker with us. We're going to create something beautiful with these young voices, and we're going to get it up on the stage.
Brava, bravo.
Yeah, so tune in Saturday, 1 o'clock Mountain Standard Time. Many thanks to Denise Clarke, as well as our crew, Alex Robinson, who's our wonderful tech master, as well as the executive director of Making Treaty 7, who is with us, Neil Fleming, our social media goddess, Ayla, who's probably texting me at this moment. Okay, she just texted, and she said, Emily Parkhouse said, both artists. Oh, we have another question before we close the show. Is there a role that you wish you could play? Is there a role you wish you could play? Gender, identity, age, etc. What is your dream role? And that's what we're going to close on. Denise, what would be your dream role in the world if somebody offered you something right now?
Oh, if someone said right now, what do you want to play? I would like to play Martha in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, believe it or not. I'd love to play that part.
Nice.
It's a massive, sprawling, messy role, and I like to play Martha.
That's wonderful. So let's put
What
that.
would you play? What's your dream role?
What's my dream role? Oh, God. I have no idea, to be honest. I mean, that's not even where my head is right now.
Okay, we're going to work on that.
Yeah.
And we'll get back to you.
We'll get back to you. So in saying all of that, we want to say a really big, huge thank you to all the viewers who have been with us through this whole series of Istotsi. We want to say thank you to our board of Making Treaty 7, again to Ayla from media, to Kaylee Crow, and to Liz Breaker, who are artistic associates, to all the artists that have been on this wonderful series, to all the alumni, and to all the artists that are up and coming. We want to just say thank you, hands up to all of you, and check us out at Making Treaty 7. Get a Mutson.